wasting company time. Same thing with phone messages, same thing with internet usage. A lot of times people use social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace while they're at work, and while they're doing that, they're wasting the company's time and resources. How and if to protect whistleblowers. And whistleblowers, again, are employees who expose their company's illegal activities. Some companies have specific policies as to if they're going to protect whistleblowers. Other companies don't address it. And what they're saying then is, if they're not going to address it, that it's not okay for people to turn in the illegal activities of their company. Enron was a good example there. They didn't have any policy in place, and so when it finally came out, when they exploited the company's illegal doings to the press, it was a huge shock, and many even executives within the company were surprised to hear that. Lastly, how to address bosses who take credit for their subordinates' achievements. That's quite common, but a lot of companies, to avoid the problem, will address it on the front end rather than having to deal with it on the back end. The third category is the corporation. The main thing with the corporation, the main benefit of the corporation, is it connects people who have the necessary capital, but not necessarily the time or the skills required to run a business. It connects those people with the people who do not have the necessary capital, but have the training and the skills and the time required to run a successful business. It's kind of the corporation, but the separation of ownership and management has become very, very critical in successful organizations. Lastly, the nature and the value of financial markets. This is where a lot of ethical issues arise, because people can trade, buy, sell stock, and make millions of dollars in a matter of minutes. And the ethical issues arise when organizations will mislead potential investors about the quality of their product. For example, if I want you to invest in my product, I'm going to tell you that my product is doing very well, when in fact it may not be. On the other end of that, investors oftentimes look for insider information to make a decision as to buy, to sell, or to trade their stock. All those things, of course, can lead to some serious ethical issues, and more importantly, some legal issues at the back end of all those scenarios. There are some things that companies can do and organizations can do to avoid ethical issues, and the first and the most important is having training sessions. They can help employees identify ethical dilemmas or ethical dimensions of business decisions. In other words, they can give their employees ethical dilemmas that they may encounter, and they can train them as to how their company would prefer to handle those situations. For example, with our scenario about the person go ahead and make a $200 donation to the soccer team. Well, some companies would sooner make that donation in order to get that customer. Other companies say, well, we're not going to do that regardless. And so you have to, the employee has to know, where does my company stand on those issues. The second, give employees a means to address ethical issues. Is there a human resource person that I can talk to if I know that there's some shady business going on, some unethical behavior? Can I talk to someone? Am I going to be ostracized as being a whistleblower, or will I be embraced? They need to know that. And finally, make employees aware that their actions define the company's ethical posture, both internally and externally. In other words, organizations need to establish a strong corporate culture where unethical behavior is frowned upon, and that everyone knows it's frowned upon, and that there cannot be underhanded, under-the-table type of deals, because those types of things will be punished. The next aspect of the portfolio was the data collection method. I had case studies of my data collection method. I feel that it provides a lot of benefits for the business ethics in particular. Namely, the researcher would need to understand both aspects, both arguments of the debate, and therefore they would understand it a little bit more deeply than if they just took a survey. They only get the opinion of those who actually participate in the survey. With a case study, they actually have to understand all the sides of the argument, and that will lead to, like I mentioned, some deeper understanding. This is the point where I'd like to look at the handout that Ms. Mueller has given you, and this is an example of a case study regarding ethics in advertising. So I'd like you to take a minute to read it, and then we'll go over the discussion questions together. Pause. So as you can see, with the situation that Larry's in, there's really some ethical issues at hand. But with these discussion questions, it's kind of each person has their own opinion. There is no right or wrong answer, but ultimately, Larry's in the position he's in, and Larry has to do what's best for Larry. So, do you agree with Larry's choice? Would you have handled it differently? It's on an individual basis. Larry did what he had to do because Larry wants to do a job, and he wants to get promoted within the company, and he wants to advance his career. And to do those things, perhaps he has to put a little bit of a spin on it, on the movie, but that's Larry's job. Finally, these are my conclusions, my reflection. Any organization that has the most resources and the best and the brightest employees, they're still going to be under some they're going to have some serious issues if they do not address ethical training, if they don't address business ethics. Executives should set up training programs so that they can get the most out of their employees and so they don't have any legal issues with their employees making the wrong decisions. And finally, organizations should have an ethical corporate culture so that people know that unethical actions and unethical decision making is frowned upon and that it won't be condoned and that there will be consequences. Thank you.